since I've done the So y'all's president is out here just being the biggest racist because he knows that's the only way that he's going to win. I mean, the way things are going, I'll get to that in a second when I talk about the next subject. But I mean, he's just really been like turning it up. I mean, we already know he's a racist. We already know majority of his fan base is racist. Probably right about now, his fan base is racist. I don't give a damn. Y'all are racist. I mean, it's just really, I mean, he's just strictly has turned to race as a way to try and hype up his base. He feels that that's the only way that he's going to win or have a chance of winning is by playing the race card. And they're always talking about black folks play the race card and we're tired of hearing about the race card and everything like that. He's doing the same exact thing. He's doing this woe is me as a white man, as a white person, and all it really boils down to is fear. They're afraid of being the minority. That's what all of this is about. And it's so out of control to the point where it's sad. You know, I mean, he's attacking people in Congress who don't agree with him. He goes straight to race. He's attacking people in Congress who are openly against him, who are going after people who he appoints, that they're doing their jobs. And what's he doing is falling back on race. I'm tired of him openly associating everything bad neighborhoods, bad schools, no jobs, violence, killings, and all this stuff just with black people in black areas. Now, he doesn't directly say it because he knows better. He doesn't want to play that game yet. We know what it is. And he's just like a sissy in a boys' camp out here, just rolling around city to city. He's back in his element once again and just taking it all in. I mean, that nose is just up in the air and he's sniffing it all in like a dog. And it's really, really sad that this is what it's come down to. I mean, it's crazy. He has to get out of there immediately. He has to get out of office. And I don't know. That's why I really haven't been talking about him lately, because it's just so ridiculous. And that's what he wants. He wants people to talk about him. He doesn't care if it's good or bad or whatever. He just wants to have his name out there and in the news. I'm like, dude, you're already the president. What the hell else do you want? But you can't govern. You know, your policies, you don't have any policies. So this is what you want to turn to. I mean, you know, even in his re-election campaign, he's not going to talk about, at least constantly, he's not going to talk about the economy. He's not going to talk about healthcare. He's not going to talk about all of these things that are supposed to be important. He's just going to play this race game until he can't play it anymore. He has to go. And I'm just scared that if the Democrats don't get it together and keep this infighting and disagreements openly, it's just going to cause a weakness in the party that, I mean, Democrats are already weak, but this is just going to cause another weakness that's going to be exposed, and it's going to cause more infighting. And I don't want to have another, I don't even know what to call it, but incident, I guess, like what happened in 2016 where people didn't vote or voted for somebody who wasn't going to win, or just went on and voted for Trump because they didn't like Hillary, or they didn't, you know, they weren't moderate and they wanted a progressive in there. So since they couldn't get a progressive, they just didn't vote or whatever. I mean, we can't have that again, because if not, it's going to be another 4 years of this bull crap. We don't need that. We can't deal with it. He's raising tariffs, you know, with China, where we get most of our goods from. And I understand wanting to do that, but you don't have anything in play to bring manufacturing jobs, or there aren't already manufacturing jobs set up in the United States for us to manufacture these goods that we're getting from China. So with these tariffs and the price of goods coming over imported from China, what's going to I mean, there's nothing set in place. It's the same thing as with healthcare. They wanted to get rid of healthcare so bad. They wanted to get rid of quote unquote Obamacare, Affordable Care Act, whatever you want to call it. They wanted to get rid of it so badly, but they never had anything in place. I don't understand, but this is enough's enough. So y'all don't like Uncle Joe anymore? Y'all ain't feeling Joe Biden anymore? And the crazy thing is, these things have been known about Joe Biden for years. You know, I mean, he had a role in he's been in politics for a long time, and he's a moderate Democrat. So he's had his hand in so many things. I mean, the Anita Hill case, busing, you know, I mean, all these things that, you know, black people are trying to throw in his face now that, I mean, if you didn't know it before, then you just don't pay attention. And, you know, I mean, everyone's not into politics. I get that. But, I mean, if you weren't worried about it then, why are you worried about it now? And I'm not saying that I'm voting for him. He has the best chance. He's in the lead. I get why the other Democratic nominees during this debates are attacking him and going at him, because that's what you're supposed to do to the one that's in the lead. You're supposed to try to not necessarily discredit, but try to get the attention away from him and onto you. This bickering, I mean, the last debate, especially the second night where Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, who else? Well, you know, that second night of the debate this past week, they talked about healthcare a majority of the time. And I'm going to tell you, the person who really stood out and who had the best debate but doesn't have a chance in hell in winning, and I hate to say that because we thought Trump didn't have a chance in hell, and look what happened, but what's her name? Marianne Williamson. She's the motivational speaker and writer, and, you know, she makes the most sense. And you always need someone like that on the debate stage to make everybody else step their game up. She's on point, and she even knows that she doesn't have a chance of winning, or at least that's what, you know, she's saying or whatever. The thing about it is, if she keeps on making sense, she's going to probably get more attention. And the thing about it also is that you don't want too much attention to get away from Joe Biden, from Bernie, and Elizabeth Warren, because I think one of those three are definitely going to be the nominee. But regardless, we need someone who's going to win. Those three in early polls, and I really hate going by polls, I'm sorry, because, I mean, it's only a select group of people. But I guess these polls that they've been doing recently are very reliable, I guess, and are being open to a wider demographic, you know, not just Democrats, not just Republicans, but a mixture of just people who are pretty much just fed up, you know, regular people who are just fed up. And in most of these polls, they have Joe Biden killing President Trump in the results. Elizabeth Warren is like double-digit percentage above Trump. And I think Bernie Sanders and Kamala Harris are pretty close to Trump, but they're still, you know, at a higher percentage to win. And that doesn't mean anything. We thought Hillary was going to win because she was winning all these polls and everything like that. And she did win the popular vote. And I still hate the Electoral College because it's just so ridiculous that this still exists in 2019, that the Electoral College is still a thing, but it's not going anywhere, especially with this administration. They're definitely not going to revisit, you know, something to amend the Electoral College because, or I should say abolish and possibly amend the Electoral College, because this is how Republicans have won for decades. You know, they haven't won by the popular vote, but they win by the Electoral College. And I mean, populations are changing, so the votes within the Electoral College per state need to change as well. I mean, states that used to be red at one time have turned blue. States that used to be blue at one time have turned red. So it's just like the Electoral College doesn't make any sense. It's not really fair anymore. And you would think that it would just go by the popular vote. And that's something else that turns a lot of people off with voting, you know, because it's just like, because I remember so many people were so confused, like, well, Hillary had, you know, won by like, what, 3-4 million votes? I don't know if it was that much, but it was millions of votes that she won by, and she still lost. And, you know, people know the Electoral College, but they're like, they didn't realize until this election how important the Electoral College is. So we just had to get it together. But this attacking Joe Biden the way that y'all are, and not just Joe, but so many people. I mean, it's just like, I mean, y'all are just bickering back and forth, and it's just not good. The things going on Capitol Hill among the Democrats within especially the House, which we have control over, it's just like... I mean, I don't know where this is going to go. I truly don't, but it's not looking good right now. Republicans have a huge advantage in certain parts still. I wish someone would have challenged Trump, a Republican, but the Republican Party is so effed up right now and just Trumpified, I guess you could say, that there's really, nothing else that can be done. So there's that, but just get it together, Democrats. Next debate will be in September. It'll be a lower number of nominees on the stage, and I think it'll just be one night, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe two still, but I can't remember, but I know it's in September and it'll be less people. So I'll probably start watching it then, or at least as much as I can stomach. And if they're still doing this, ganging up on one person or, not really getting into the issues, they're so busy fighting each other that they're not even really talking about Trump. And they're not talking about the administration. And this is what Trump and them wanted. They wanted this, and they're getting it handed right to them on a silver platter. So these next couple topics are strictly for the saints and the saints at heart. So let's just get into all these fake Christian hypocrites and just evil devils and everything that are pretty much the mouthpiece for the Christian party, and not only that, for the Black Christians out here. So let's start with Juanita Bynum. Now, Juanita Bynum, Juanita Bynum has so many skeletons in her closet, but people still live for her. And let me just say this, I'm not afraid to go after these supposedly God's anointed people, quote unquote, because they're not acting like God's anointed people. And when you don't act like it, just because you have this title, just because you have this word, just because you can sing, that means nothing to me. Nothing at all. So let's just go ahead and get into these next few stories that just involve some of God's anointed. So let's start with Juanita Bynum. Now, Juanita Bynum was asked to do she wasn't asked. She was booked for a conference. And y'all know I'm not going to have all the names and everything like that. Plus, the story's a couple weeks old. But she was for this, she was there to preach and sing for, I guess people like her, they do both anyway. So whatever. But she was there to be at this conference in Virginia, at a church in Virginia, with a young pastor and first lady. So they've been fans of Juanita Bynum for a long time, and they were so happy to have her. And, the saints are going to come, and they're going to pay a nice little coin in contribution, quote unquote, to the church to see, these legends. You know what I mean. Juanita Bynum, she was scheduled to be at this conference, and I guess her, she had all these crazy demands. Now let's just go back real quick. Let's talk about this video that Juanita Bynum put out. Juanita Bynum put out this video where she was responding to why she didn't show up for this conference. Main thing she was talking about was how she's not over the top and demanding and, just ridiculous, just with her requests and demands. But yet she went on for minutes talking about all of her requests and demands that she does, and they were just ridiculous. I mean, everything she talked about, but she was really trying to start out and say that I'm not this way, but I do this way and this way and this way and this is, I mean, it was crazy. So I lost it then. I just started cracking up like, girl, you don't even realize that's how detached you are from reality and the word that you are giving, that you don't even realize just how you just contradicted yourself right there. So her main reason for doing this video was because she didn't show up at the conference because she felt violated and disrespected by the pastor who brought her there, because he went in her hotel room and allegedly saw her drawers and her other personal mentionables and all this other stuff. He allegedly saw those. So keep that in mind right there. That's why she felt disrespected, and she's on there. When she put up the church finger and then started started doing that fake cry and everything like that, I completely lost it then. I mean, it was just like, girl, I mean, and scene, you know, and you're not even a good actress. So there's that. So anyway, the backstory of what happened is Juanita Bynum, she wasn't there. She wasn't even checked in to the hotel. She wasn't even in the city. I can't remember what city in Virginia it was. I want to say Chesapeake or something like that, but she wasn't even there when this happened. So the reason why the pastor went into her room was because Juanita had all these demands, and because she's Juanita Bynum, this legend, you know, this whatever you want to call her in church and gospel, that he wanted to make sure everything was set up. So keep that in mind too. She wasn't even supposed to be there, and she wasn't. So the hotel staff let him in the room because he wanted to leave what was it, like a flower arrangement or something like that. He wanted to leave that in there, and he also wanted to, you know, make sure that everything was up to par to what she requested and make sure that everything was okay, because this is Juanita Bynum. So when he opened the door to the room, he was like, wait a minute. He said, I see suitcases in here, but, you know, she's not supposed to be here. So he immediately leaves. And I guess he goes down to the hotel room, to the hotel desk, and he says, you know, I went up there to check on everything and make sure everything was okay for Miss Bynum, and it appears somebody's in her room already. So he just went on and left. He never left the flowers or anything like that because he was caught off guard. Now, people could sit up here and say that he shouldn't have been in the hotel room or anything like that, but mind you, they weren't supposed to be there yet. Juanita wasn't there, but it was her team that was there to basically do the same thing that he was going in there to do, was because they wanted to make sure everything was okay for her. Okay, understandable. Miscommunication, whatever, there's that. Juanita's stuff wasn't even there. So how did he see her panties and all this other stuff, and how did that even come up? So Juanita says that when she gets there, you know, to her hotel rooms, that, you know, she lays, you know, she has her staff lay out all these white sheets and everything to cover up the beds because people have been having sex on them, and to cover up the couch because people have sex on that. You know, on the other bed in the room, her staff lays out all her underwear and her dresses and things like that just on this one bed, which I find that hard to believe, but that's what she says it could happen. So somehow someone in her camp, one of her assistants or whatever, made up that story when they found out that he was in the room. And he claims he didn't even go in the room, that he opened the door, he unlocked the door, and he saw suitcases there. He went down there and was like, you know, is somebody in this room? This is the room that was supposed to be booked for Miss Bynum. And that's when he found out that her staff had checked in early, but Juanita wasn't there, but the staff was there. So he went on. So of course, Juanita used also not only him coming into the room, but she said he was there, said that he was going to leave me flowers and everything like that. Well, where were the flowers? He freaked out because he saw bags in there, you know, and he didn't want anything to be wrong. So he went down and checked on it. When he found out that it was your people, he left. You know, he just didn't, threw off what he wanted to do. So he just left. Okay. So the story gets back to her that he saw her underwear and all this other stuff. And, you know, because obviously she wasn't told this until the next day when she was there, which was supposed to be the day of the conference. So not only she was supposed to arrive in Virginia, she was supposed to arrive there sometime that afternoon, that same afternoon that he was going to go check on her earlier that morning. Now, she was supposed to arrive the next day, that afternoon. So that's what threw everything off too. But instead of her arriving when she was supposed to, now they had a ride for her. You know, they had a black limousine because she doesn't like white limousines, because they remind her of her sister's funeral and all this other stuff, which is understandable. People say that you will jump in a white Escalade in a minute. But anyway, I digress. So she went on and she decided to come in around midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. So she arrives and she's wondering, okay, where's my ride at? No one knew that you were coming in at that time. Okay, no one knew. So somehow she gets a hold of the pastor, and, you know, he and the first lady are like, okay, we'll come get you. Mind you, this is 1 o'clock in the morning. There's this big conference the next day. Everyone's sleep, girl. You know, they're asleep. They're trying to get stuff, you know, they're exhausted, trying to get everything together for you. And, you know, you just mess up the whole flow, and you expect everyone to just drop what they're doing to come get you because you decided to come in earlier. And not only that, in the middle of the night. Okay. I mean, All right, whatever. So the pastor and first lady at the church that are hosting this event say, okay, we'll come get you and we'll come together. So it won't just be one of us. It'll be both of us. We'll come and get you from the airport. She said, no, I don't want to see the pastor and first lady before I'm supposed to preach. Now, I don't know what the big deal is. I don't know, maybe that's just a thing that she has or whatever, but it's not like you're going to see your husband or wife right before your wedding. I mean, what's the big deal? So they, they're like, everyone's asleep, but they didn't know who to call. So they call a friend of theirs who works, with them at the church. And he says, okay, I'll go get her. Now, mind you, this is in the middle of the night. I guess she didn't like the outfit that he wore when he showed up. I guess he had on jeans and a t-shirt. I mean, girl. So she said she was upset about that. She felt that was disrespectful for him showing up to pick her up in jeans and a t-shirt. This is the church, y'all. This is what the church has come to now. Instead of you just going and doing, giving the word to people and anointing them and blessing them, you're more worried and turned off by what somebody has on in the middle of the night when you weren't even supposed to be there. So right then, I believe that she made up her mind that she was going to try to use that as an excuse not to perform anyway. So the next morning, that's when her staff told her that, I guess while she was out real quick or something like that earlier that morning, that he came in the room and that he saw her panties and whatever else, girdles, whatever the hell she wears, sprawled out on the bed where her staff lays all her stuff out. So her evil staff pumped that in her head. So from that moment on, so between the limo ride and between Pastor seeing her unmentionables because she didn't want him looking at her preaching, knowing what she has on underneath her outfit that she's wearing. Girl. So that's when she was like, okay, I'm not doing this, I'm not going. And that's what the big thing was. But mind you, she didn't perform. She didn't come to the conference, but girlfriend stayed in Virginia in that hotel room that the pastor and first lady and their church paid for. She stayed in that hotel room for a few days to get some relaxation. I mean, what kind of crap is that? Then she gets on video and just lies about what happened, how it happened. I'm not, over the top and all this other stuff, but I like everything over the top. I mean, it was just ridiculous. And it's just typical. But that's all I'm going to say about Juanita Bynum. So that was the big thing about Juanita Bynum this week, or I'm sorry, these past few weeks, because people are still talking about it. People are still pissed. And of course, a lot of the saints are taken up for her and everything like that because that's what they do. Everyone else is wrong, but they can do no wrong because they are God's anointed. Bye. And here we go with Kim Burrell again in the LGBTQ community. I mean, she seriously has a fascination with the community. For someone who doesn't care about what the gays and whoever else is saying about her, she seems to really be bothered. For someone who's unbothered, she's completely bothered because she always tries to throw shade at the LGBTQ community in maybe once a month, maybe once every other month, she has to throw something in there. And of course, her congregation is just, cheering her on and everything like that. And it's just disgusting. But if you don't care for the community, why do you keep talking about them? No one has said anything about you. None of the gays are featuring you until you say something. And it's just like you want that attention. I don't understand why you want it. I don't get it. But you sit up here and talk about, I don't understand that life. I don't understand all that stuff. I'm from the church. Well, honey, a lot of people that are from the church are of that life. So let's just get that correct and put out there and up front. And of course, in typical Kim Burrell fashion, she goes on to talk about as much money as she has. And, she's buying some multi-million-dollar building here and everything like that. It always goes to money, because that's all she has. Her husband left her years ago, which, obviously she's still bitter about that. And allegedly, I don't know if he left her for a woman or a man because it was, stated that he did have affairs with men as well. Okay, so that could be part of her problem with the community is because she lost her man because he was one of the girls or is one of the girls, whatever. But I digress. dress. Also, her brother is a whole queen, like a complete and total queen out here. So she's one of those people who bash the gay community, who talk bad about gay people, except for everyone in her family or a friend or something like that. It's like all other gay people are bad except for my gay person, my gay, that's what it is. And girlfriend has been out here looking a mess ever since she turned off the gays, and she started coming at the gays because she had to go and get a straight glam squad, and they ain't getting her together. So there's that. Once again, Kim Burrell's at her old tricks. She needed some attention. She wanted to try to start something to get her name in the news again. Girl, get some help. Get some help. Let it go and let God. Miss Donnie McClurkin is out here, being her little shady self and everything once again, and talking about how we need to just ignore and let go and pretty much let God's anointed and people of the church, basically meaning the pastors and the gospel singers, get away with basically discretions and things that they do. There's a pastor out here that is stealing. He should be forgiven. If there's a pastor out here that is committing adultery, he or she should be forgiven. If there's a pastor out here who's been molesting little boys and girls, whatever, then they should be forgiven. They're the only ones that, are supposed to be forgiven because what? They're God's anointed. I'm so sick of people. I mean, just, so that's her feelings. That's how Donnie McClurkin feels. And I mean, girl, just because you can't live in your truth anymore because you came out with this whole fake story a la Andrew Caldwell about you're delivered and all this other stuff. I mean, just be yourself. People are so miserable who just can't be themselves. And I think that's a reason why a lot of people, and not just people in the church, but people, period, who have a problem with the LGBTQ community, is that whatever demons you're facing, or, you're out here fronting like, you're happily married and you're not, or, you're happily single and you're not, or, I mean, just whatever, you can't be yourself. You have to front for other people, and it's annoying and it's exhausting. So you see people out here living in their truth, and they're the wrong ones. They're the devils. I mean, stop it, and this is why so many people are leaving the church. And this is why so many people don't go to the church and talk against the church. And it just kills me when people talk against the church. They get this title, this new phrase that goes around, which I'm doing a blog post about it, so look out for that on DannieBSpeaks.com. But there's a new saying that goes around, and it's called church hurt. So let's talk about being church hurt just real quick and briefly, because I am, like I mentioned, I'm doing a post about it on my blog. So let's just talk about it just real quick, just what this whole church hurt thing really is about. So there's this term, church hurt, that people who are still involved in the church very heavy, or they're just new to the church and they think that they're better than everybody. It's just another way to criticize people who speak out against the church, people who just, don't attend church for various reasons. So they get this thing called on them where they're labeled church hurt. And instead of being good Christians and trying to find out why these people are quote unquote church hurt and why they're not going to church and why they're not involved in the church, instead, we're just going to disrespect them and say, oh, y'all are just church hurt. Get the fuck out of here. Excuse my language, but people are just, oh my gosh. I mean, it's just so annoying. Oh, I just can't take it. Now, I mean, for one thing, the church doesn't even feel like church anymore. And for people who grew up in the church and who don't really attend anymore or attend that frequently, you know what I'm talking about. It's so judgmental. Most of them are nothing but a fashion show. You're in there with a bunch of hypocrites and, people who think they're better than you. There's so much judgment going on within the church that is just ridiculous. If I go into church and I don't feel comfortable, I'm not coming back. I'm sorry, I'm not coming back. I can get a word anywhere. And people make this big thing about going to church. And that's fine if that's for you. That's a beautiful thing. But don't knock the next person because they're not into it. You know what I mean? Like don't do that, because first of all, as Christians, you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to criticize your fellow man and woman. You're supposed to try to love them and embrace them and talk to them and find out what's going on. That's what you're supposed to do. But people don't even do do that anymore. You know what I mean? And let's just say this. If you were gay, if you're a gay man or woman or a trans man or woman, and you grew up in church and you've been hearing all these things for years, and you're finally comfortable with who you are and you're living in your truth and you're happy, why would you want to go to church and be talked down and look down on other people who say that they're praying for you or calling you a sinner and all these other things? Why would you want to go to church? Going to church isn't going to change who you are. It's not going to change anything. And if it does, then that's a problem with you that you need to work out. You know what I mean? People think that they can just pray the gay away and all this other stuff. Being gay is not just an action. It's who you are. So regardless, if you're not having sex, you're still gay. I mean, let's just talk about that. Being gay is more than just a sexual act. And that's the other thing that bothers me about people who have a problem with gay people being in the church, is because that's the first thing that you think about. Every time someone thinks about someone gay, they think about just having sex. I don't look at, straight couples and say, oh, I wonder what they look like having sex. I don't give a damn. I don't care what anybody looks like. So don't be in somebody else's bedroom if you don't want nobody in yours. Okay. And it's just funny, like when these devil preachers, they get exposed, what does everyone else say? Oh, well, my pastor's not like that. And yes, that may be well and true, but don't ignore the other bullshit that's going on in the church that is turning people off. That's all I'm saying. And in saying that, let's talk about another person who is just a jackass, who's also a man of God. Let's just talk about him real quick, and his name is David Taylor. And as you've noticed, I haven't called any of these people pastor or minister or anything like that, because they don't give me that. They give me straight devil. So there's this pastor, and I don't even care where he's from, but his name's David Taylor, and he likes to go to church and call people faggots. That's what that's just what he does. And I guarantee you, in another 5 or 10 years, maybe even before then, he's going to have some kind of homosexual affair be exposed, because people who are this obsessed with going after another group of people, they got some skeletons in their closet, or they have a hatred for them just because you can't be who they are, open and free and proud of who they are. You can't be that because you're trying to hide who you are to put on this facade of who you think you are. Okay. And let's also talk about this. So not just him calling, gay men faggots or whatever. And he probably said something about gay women, whatever. But ladies, you're not exempt either, because he went on your ass too. He went in, and of course his parishioners, were applauding and yelling amen and laughing at everything he was saying. He was talking about how women basically need to stay in their place and they need to follow the word of the Bible, which is another thing I'm going to get into in a second. But he was going after everybody except men, of course, because, why? You know what I mean? Because that's just how he feels about things. So whatever. And what these fake preachers and stuff say doesn't even really bother me anymore. It's the people who are of the church. It's the parishioners. It's the members of churches who go in here and they listen to this stuff and they agree and they applaud and, they encourage it. Y'all are the same ones calling people church hurt. Do you think somebody wants to sit in a sermon who's a gay man and hear their pastor calling them a faggot? Come on now. Let's just be for real. Him calling gay people faggots is not going to change the fact that gay people are out here. It's not going to change the fact that gay men are out here and they're here to stay. They've always been here. And I just don't understand. There's no other way that I can explain all this bullshit by just saying that if you agree with this and if you agree with the term church hurt, but you ignore the fact of why people who don't go to church and speak out against the church do, then you're not living your truth as a Christian. Because I mentioned before what Christians are supposed to do to people who they feel are lost and who they feel need to come back and all this other stuff. Instead, y'all criticize and everything because this is what your pastors are doing. So you feel it's okay. Okay, whatever. So there's that. There's all that. And I talked about this enough, probably for more than a half hour, I think, maybe not that long, but I talked about this for enough. All you church people who just want to criticize those who are grown and who have decided just, not to go to church, which let me just speak on that real quick before I get out here. 'Cause this is what I was going to say earlier. This is why sometimes I need to take notes, but I do kind of like flying off the cuff. But anyway, do people not realize that religion is man-made? Do they not realize that? Okay. I guess people people don't. I was waiting on, somebody to say, yeah, but, I guess they don't. Religion is man-made, and obviously the church is man-made. So why get so frustrated in everything about people who don't want to follow a man-made thing? You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with being religious. There's nothing wrong with going to church. But when you look down on other people because they're not you and they're not doing what you want them to do and how you feel that they believe and what they believe in and you don't agree with it and everything like that, that's not their problem. So don't criticize. And don't criticize people who say that they're more spiritual than religious, because spirituality is something that's within you. Religion is man-made. You have to grow into that pretty much. Spirituality, if you're a spiritual person, then you already had the foundation for what you need. But if you're religious, you had to find that. And there's nothing wrong with it. But don't criticize people who say that they're spiritual and not religious. I'm just saying. Well, that's this week's show. Thank you all for listening and tuning in. As usual, you're greatly appreciated. You're always appreciated. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Sorry for the delay in between shows again. As I mentioned in the intro, a lot of things are going on. Sorry about the music. I'm trying to be grown and do the beta testing and all that other stuff. So eventually, we'll get back on track or whatever. And just until then, as I mentioned before, you just get to hear my wonderful, beautiful, soothing voice. And that's it. I know y'all appreciate that. Just wanted to catch up on a few stories that I've seen, things that have been going on that I wanted to put my input in. As I mentioned earlier as well, I haven't really been paying that much attention to what's been going on the past couple weeks because I've been so busy and so exhausted. But I'm going to try to get back on track, start keeping with my notes, start paying attention more to social media again, just see what else is on there. Think about some other things to talk about, get the health segment back going and everything like that. So we'll get back on track. Just continue to work with me. I told y'all in the first episode that this is just going to be so random. It's going to be anything. There's no rhyme or reason. There's no format. We're just going. We're just talking. Whatever topic I write down, I'm either going to talk about it or not, or if somebody asks me to say something about this or what my opinion is on this, I'm going to talk about it. Excuse me. This weekend, I'm also going to go through, I have some comments and some questions from listeners that I want to get to, and I'll do a segment in the next podcast or two with those once I go through them and see which ones, that I'm either going to answer directly to them or do on the show. So we'll get into all that stuff later on. But as always, thank you. If you have anyone or anything that you'd like me to endorse, promote, whatever, please hit me up at DannieBSpeaks@gmail.com. If you have your own podcast, if you have your own website, blog, whatever you do that's, you're trying to build up your brand or whatever, let me know. I got a nice little following, maybe I can bring people over for you. Maybe you can bring people over for me. Let's just do this. Let's network. Let's get it going, so let's just get all that going on. Let's get that cracking. And don't forget to tune into the podcast. You can listen to it on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, and of course, DannieBSpeaks.com. And don't forget to visit DannieBSpeaks.com for just random stuff that I just want to post on there or whatever. As always, thanks for tuning in, and we'll do this again in another week and a half or whatever. Hopefully a week. Hopefully I'll have something by next weekend. Y'all have a safe and productive week, and I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.